Well, hello and welcome everyone. Laura Brandenburg here from Bridging the Gap, and I'm joined by May Busch. I'm so excited. Welcome, May.
Thank you, Laura. I'm excited too. This is wonderful.
Yes, yes. So if you have joined us, please let us know in the chat where you're joining from and yeah, what your role is. So I would love to hear just kind of what you're doing today, and it also lets us know that we are officially live to all the people. So it's really great if you could leave us a quick comment. Just let us know where you're joining from. So as you're doing that, I just want to share a bit about May. So May is an executive coach, a speaker, an advisor, an author, and the former COO of Morgan Stanley Europe. So that's amazing. She has had a successful 24-year career in investment banking, rising through the ranks of the C-suite. So who best to talk to us about leadership? And that's what we're here for today, is the transition from individual contributor to leadership roles. So now she's sharing what she's learned, mostly through the hard way, to help professionals become better leaders and to succeed in their careers faster and more easily. May's weekly career advice blog has reached tens of thousands of professionals from more than 165 countries. She's the CEO and founder of Career Mastery, the online resource for actionable career advice to show up at your best, and the author of Accelerate: 9 Capabilities to Achieve Success at Any Career Stage, and a graduate of the Harvard Business School. So I would say we have a bit of a genius among us when it comes to leadership. So thank you so much for being here, May. I'm really excited about it.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for a wonderful introduction. I think we all have our genius zones. So that's the spirit in which I think we'll take the genius comment. We're each in our own genius zones.
I had a feeling you'd be a bit humble about that. So just like as a background for like, where did I find May and how did we come to be together today? So May and I were in a mastermind together. I don't know. It started like we started there together maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And when I joined, you had already been what I thought of as somebody who'd been around for ages and was one of the few people in that group doing work in a corporate space. And so I just really latched onto you as a guide and a mentor. And, you know, we meet today and provide feedback still on various things. And I just so appreciate like the grounded advice that you bring to the group and how you always like are such a great listener and help bring us back to like what the real issue is. And so I really just appreciate that, May. And I'm so glad to share you with my community today. So
well, that's wonderful. And you know, Laura, one of the things that I remember is how excited I was when you joined that mastermind so many years ago, because like you said, there weren't very many, if any of us, aside from me, and who were really helping people in corporate. And that's, I think we were like magnets that attracted. Oh no, that would make us opposites.
Right.
Well, you know what I mean. So yeah. And I appreciate your, I don't know if your community knows this about you, but you are a really deep and big thinker, because didn't you major in philosophy? Am I right about that?
I did. Yes.
Yeah. And that comes through in our masterminds or in our groups when you are able to ask the question that just expands. It's like the Big Bang Theory. Whoa, right? We were looking here and now we should be looking up like that.
Well, my VAs listening in should take note of that, because that is probably a skill that they have as well. It is like a hallmark of a business analyst, is just listening and asking the questions. So
fantastic.
Thank you for that, May. Thank you. So we wanted to start today just by sharing a little bit about our journeys from individual to leader. So May, what was this like for you? Like what was your role, like your first leadership role? How did you decide that you even wanted it?
Well, first, I just want to distinguish between what I call leadership, capital L, which is the position of leadership, the formal authority or the seat, and lowercase leadership, which is the behavior and the activity and the action of leading. And I believe that the lowercase L we can do from wherever we are. But I think today we're talking about the uppercase L, which is the formal, hey, you're the one leading the charge on this particular aspect of the work or the business. And so let me ask you this, Laura. Am I going in the way back machine when I had first time ever somebody reporting to me and it was just one person? Is that what we're talking about?
For sure. Yeah. That was mine too. It was just one person. I think that's
just one person. And if anybody out there is having the least bit of anxiety about leadership, capital L, you realize you can dip your toe in the water. Nobody's going to give you the entire main division of Corporation X as your first leadership role. So for me, that happened really organically. And there's a set of stepping stones, which I don't know if this holds true in the BA world, but in investment banking, you start out at the junior part of the totem pole. You're the analyst, financial analyst. And then when you become the associate, then you get to have an analyst helping you to do the work that you used to do, but you're supposed to now do the next level. So it just happened organically. And the funny thing was nobody trained me to do that. Nobody trains people generally in companies to do that. So I wasn't terribly good at it in the beginning, but I was really interested in it. And so that's how it got better. So that was my first step into leadership. But then
and why did you decide to go that way? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, in a way, there was a certain degree of leadership in that incremental sense that was just organic, and you almost couldn't avoid it, or you wanted to have it because they were giving you more responsibility and you had to backfill. So that's how I kind of fell into it. But then what really was the bigger answer is that I just assumed that I would be the leader. Like I always aspired to be at the top of the whatever pyramid or whatever it is, wherever I am. So I just kind of say, oh yeah, top of the stairs, yes, I'm there. Top of the escalator, yes, I'm there. Top of the organization, yes, that's what I want to do. Without really thinking too much about it.
And now you're running your own company. So that's perfect. I would love to hear in the chat too, if that resonates with people, right? Do you just assume that this is your next thing? Or are there, some hesitations about it, right? And I'll share my journey. It was similar. My first big L leadership role was hiring one person to help. And I was in a new company, but with a manager I had worked with in other companies. So he knew my background and capabilities. And it was just like, there's just too much to do. He's like, well, then you need to hire someone, Laura. We got plenty of budget. Like, that's not always the case these days, right? But in that case, we were funded for a couple of years. Hire somebody. And I'm like, well, no, you hire somebody to help me. Like, no, you're hiring. And it was sort of like I was just pushed into that role. And we were just growing so fast that before I knew it, I was in a director level position running this 15-person team that I had built from the ground up, but really with no leadership training, no prior experience, and just a willingness to do it and figure things out at the end of the day. But it was hard to do it without a path to get there, and just sort of to take it one step at a time. So I do. Yeah. Any reflections on that? Is a pattern that you've seen of people just sort of falling into the role almost?
Yeah. And there's another pattern I've seen, which is people getting promoted because they were excellent at the specific skill. Either they were the best BA in this case, and they you get promoted to be in charge of all the BAs, or in the bank, it was the biggest producer became in charge of all the producers. And that isn't always a recipe for success, because the skill set that and the interests that someone needs to have to be really good at in the example in banking, being the best salesperson, let's say, versus being able to lead other humans. Those are not identical.
Mm-hmm. And very much so within business analysis. And we're going to talk specifically about some of those today too, about like the skills you need to learn and the skills you almost need to let go of. Right.
Yep.
But before we get here, I think both of us just sort of took this leap, but I know my BAs and they like to think about, is this what I really want? Right. So, and sometimes people might be wondering if it's what they want because of the assumptions that they're making about what leadership might look like. So we would love to hear from you. Like, what are the assumptions that you're making about what it's like to be a leader? And, that might be kind of even holding you back from putting your name in the hat, so to speak. And while we're waiting for, people to think about that and digest that, like one of the assumptions I know I see people in our community make is that if I'm going to move into leadership, particularly into a management role, that is going to require working more hours and it's going to be less flexible, often because they see all the managers in their company working weekends or always on email and things like that. So, I mean, for you, May, do you see those like working more hours have to come with a leadership role? Is that a fair assumption?
Well, I'll say two things. One is there are many ways to do any job, including leading people. There's some things that are foundational, like you need to care about the people who are in your group. You need to negotiate on behalf of them for resources, for compensation, all of those things. But beyond that, what we're talking about here is, does it take more time? Does it take over your life and take away your flexibility? And I think it's going to be really about how you decide to approach the role and what kind of boundaries you set for yourself. And this is where I think the assumption of this will take time and reduce my flexibility, you really want to pressure test that. And as a business analyst, you got to pressure test the assumptions and the data, right? So this is the same thing. And on the one hand, there are a lot more, you and I talked about this, Laura, interdependencies that you're managing. And that makes it maybe a little bit more fluid. So you don't have complete control over what is going on. I mean, who actually has control over everything that's going on? But on a relative basis, it's not like you can take your piece of the work as a business analyst, do all the analysis, the crunching, the thinking, and then deliver your piece. There's just a lot more moving parts. So in that sense, does that reduce your flexibility? I think of it as it just shifts the way that the hours are spent. And does it reduce my flexibility? I am someone who likes to do a lot of things at the same time. I don't necessarily mean multitasking, because that has been shown to be ineffective.
Or impossible, right? Like actually physically and mentally impossible.
Right? But what I mean is, I am okay with saying, all right, well, we're going to go out to dinner as a family, but I know I have to just make sure that this one issue if it pops up, I know I'm going to have to take a call, and I can make it a brief call. So yeah, I'm okay with that. But if you're the kind of person who says, I want to eat. Oh yeah. So this goes back to my childhood. We had these cousins. This is an analogy, everybody. So stay with me for a while. And we'd have a vegetable rice. You always had to have rice with Chinese dinners, and a protein. So they would eat all the peas first, the vegetable, all the rice second, and then all the meat third. Whereas my sister and I, we would have a bit of each of the three in every mouthful. And we were just looking at each other's plates and going, wow, can't believe you do it that way. So if you're the kind of person who likes to have everything in its compartment, and I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. I'm at the desk working, I'm at the desk working. And I don't take calls from my family then. You see what I mean? So you have to figure out what kind of natural tendency you have and what would make your life feel good. And so if that's the case, then yeah, it'll reduce your flexibility because maybe you can't just totally be on vacation 100, 150% of the time. Although you can go on a holiday, like hiking Mount Everest type of thing, where there just isn't any connectivity.
Which you've done, which is a total side note, right? You have taken some big hiking journeys. Yes.
I did. Yeah. Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
And that was really restful. Well, no, the climbing part was very, very hard, but being out of touch with everything else was really restful.
I will say in my experience, I also took some big vacations like that. And it was like, I remember one time, like, this is back in the BlackBerry ages, right? And like just leaving my BlackBerry on the kitchen counter and walking out the door. I was like, I'm not going to have it with me because I really did need that much of a break. And I knew if I had it with me, I would check in. And so I think also when you have a team, you have more people to support you. And especially as you grow and mentor your team, you sometimes will even get more flexibility over time. But yeah, there is that push pull about it. I think you really brought forward.
Yeah. On this, Laura,
yeah.
I just want to say, I think if you can be flexible about your flexibility, you will have more flexibility. Just like Laura, you said.
Yes. Right. When you do sort of the thing at the nth hour on occasion, then you get the half day off kind of stuff.
But you have a lot more flexibility because you've got a whole team. Yes.
Yeah. So we haven't had anybody share specific assumptions, but I do want to share this comment from British. I have some hesitation due to the fact of managing others as opposed to doing the work myself. I've had many offers to move up to a lead role. However, I've not taken it. I know I can't run from it forever. So May, anything you want to share on that one specifically?
I love what you just said. It sounds like that old saying, you can run, but you cannot hide. And what I love about this question is that there seems like a degree of inevitability in your mind, British, and it may be just a question of when, right, of timing. And there are 3 questions that I think we can ask ourselves when we're facing this question of, do I really want to do this? Should I do this? And is it now? So the first question is, what does that leadership role look, feel, and sound like in your context? What does it really mean? And getting in touch with that. And some of the things that I've seen it mean are, you get to set direction. Nice, right? Rather than being a taker, you get to be in charge of the of other BAs in this case, which some people find that a really wonderful thing, and other people just don't want to have anything to do with those messy beings called humans. And then the third is, you're traveling in different circles. You're going to be traveling in much more senior circles and much more closer to decision-making circles. You'll probably be a decision maker yourself the more you go up the leadership ranks. And then that leads to having greater influence and impact. And, any one of us, no matter how hard we work, we can only have so much impact on our own. And yes, there are ripple effects, but when you are leading other people, you're getting things done through others, but that means that together you can make a much bigger impact. So that's the first thing. What does it look like? What does it mean? The second question is, what brings you joy? And I think of what brings you joy as the intersection between 2 circles. You remember back for me, it was 2nd grade, the Venn diagram. And one circle is what you're great at doing, and the other circle is what you love doing. And that intersection of great at doing and love doing, that's really a nice place to be operating from. And that's what I meant by what brings you joy. And then you want to answer that question in 2 time horizons. What brings you joy now? So maybe you love doing the analysis and can't imagine giving it up in the next 6 to 12 months. But then see if you can roll the clock forward and imagine yourself 3 years from now, 5 years from 10 years from now. Do you still think that what will bring you the most joy is going to be doing the analysis yourself? And for many of us, we're all human beings tend to like to learn, grow, and develop. So if you think that maybe one day you're going to feel, oh gosh, I'm still doing the exact same thing I was doing 5 or 10 years ago, then it becomes a question of when am I going to make that leap? And then the third question I would ask myself is, what happens if you don't go for it? If you don't go for a leadership role, what happens to you career-wise? What's your trajectory? And how will you feel about that? So I think that's the other question.
Those are some great questions. I think I want to go back to your first question, May, about the influence. And I think, one of the things there's so much frustration about within the business analysis profession is how we're seen by our stakeholders, sort of having to fight to do the role that we think is the right practice. And so as a manager, as a leader, of a team in an organization, you're going to have more authority to start to influence and being able to have higher level conversations that shape business analysis in your whole team. So instead of reacting to the environment, you get to shape the environment. And so I think that's part of, now that as I'm digesting some of this, what brought me into that role is like, when you start to complain about, all right, then you go fix it, right? So I think it was the vision that things could be different than they were that helped me get into it as well. So if you're sitting here and you have that kind of vision, definitely be thinking about how can you use a leadership or a management position to start to bring that vision into reality.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point, Laura. And when you have ideas for how things can be better, it's really powerful to be in a seat where you can start to affect that change, and frustrating to remain in a seat where you really cannot.
For sure. For sure. Now, this came up a bit. I think this is another piece of British's question, which that we wanted to talk about, because I know for me as a manager, it was so hard to go from being a very detail-oriented, analytical person to being somebody who could see all the moving parts without doing the detailed analysis myself. And I would anticipate in investment banking and financial analysis, there were some parallels there. So do you have some advice about how somebody can progress through that?
Yeah, it's so funny when you just said that. I had this realization that I still love to do a spreadsheet. And I still think that I can do the best spreadsheet, which of course, the apps and technologies have grown and advanced so much that I actually am not even half or even a third as good as my team at this, but I persist in trying to spreadsheet things by myself. So some of those tendencies are just going to be with you always, but you can apply them in places that make the most sense. So for me, the way to think about making this shift, because that's really what we're talking about, right? Loving the detail, being really good at, and then being able to not dip down. And that's how I think of it. And I had to say to myself, don't dip down, because and then I was getting in the way of the people who now were on my team and supposed to be doing that analysis. But underneath all of it is, if you don't change your mindset, then you're just going to keep doing the same thing, and maybe you even have the title of the leader, but you're not going to be behaving as that leader, and it will cause a lot of dysfunctions on the team. And so you really have to change your mindset and change the way you operate. And the way to do that is to recognize that there is an existing way that you've always been doing things and an identity. So if your identity is, hey, I'm the BA who does all the analysis and I am in charge of all the detail, then what you need to do is change that identity. And that identity is embedded in your psyche with a story, a narrative. So there's some kind of narrative or storyline you're telling yourself about who you are. I'm a business analyst. This is the old way, right? And I do all the analysis. I'm on top of the detail. I have great attention to detail, and I get kudos for that. And I make an impact doing that. So there are all kinds of good things that have happened in your life and career because of that story. But now you are growing out of that story. And so you need to have a new story. So it's up to you to craft what is your new story? What is your new story as a leader? And that is going to really help you make that shift.
So what might be an example of a story I would tell myself to get myself out of the details?
So there are any number of stories you could tell, right? So maybe my old story was I'm in the detail. The new story is something like I am the leader of the team, and I create an environment where other BAs can flourish and use their BA analytical, detail-oriented skills to make a difference.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah. Anyone else get chills on that one? It's like, ooh, that's exciting, right? It's like it's a big shift. It brings you into more. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just coaching one of the senior women I was coaching. And so this is going to be the case wherever you are in your career. There's going to be your current story. And then when you are ready to make a shift, that becomes the old story. You have to create a new story. So you're always going to be old story, new story. Then that will ultimately become old story, new story. And so this woman had very suddenly been thrust into this leadership position. And she had been thinking of herself as a really good producer. Mm-hmm. And now she had to think of herself as the team leader. And my team is looking to me for direction. And so I'm the one who builds the franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another one. I execute on what I'm asked to do to a high standard versus I am the person who makes things, leads and makes things happen.
Yeah. I think what gets wrapped up in this too is a bit of like comfort with people making mistakes, right? So like, I think sometimes that detailed analysis, which I still get sucked into in my own company, right, can be this like, if there's a mistake, what's going to happen? This like worst case scenario thinking. So part of that story, I think I love that, is we can handle a mistake, or I can coach somebody to figure this out, or we can set up systems to help everyone do their best work, right? So how can you help people do that analysis, but also create an environment where people can recover from things you might have seen if you were 100% in the details? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's also something where you can train that next generation, train your bench to have that kind of eyesight. I'm going to call it eyesight.
Very good.
To be able to spot those things.
Yeah, and feel free to get any questions into our chat. Oh, we have a great one here. I'm going to come back to your question, Christine, just after the next one. I think it'll be a really good kind of follow-up to that. So May, let's say somebody has done some of this reflection you've talked about, right? And they're ready. They're like, okay, I do want to move into a leadership role. Maybe not my 2024 goal, but within the next, say, 2 to 5 years. Yep. What should they be doing this year to start to build momentum in that direction?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'd say 3 things. Number 1 is you want to make it known. To start letting people know, because it takes the organization a while to move all the chess pieces, if you will. And so you can just start talking about it. And because you're looking at a 2 to 3 year time frame or even longer, you can have this really natural conversation with your managers, with other people around the organization, just about, hey, I aspire to having a leadership role. I think I can make a bigger impact, and any advice you have for what kinds of things I should be doing in the meantime to prepare to be able to do that really well. So making it known in that graceful way that doesn't say to your boss, I'm going to want to take your job in 2 years.
I think I see so much resistance. Like, we have to hold our goals close, right? We can't let people know about them because they think we're going to leave the organization or take, all kinds of reasons. So, I mean, this is such great advice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Give yourself permission to have that conversation. And I think people will be more open to it than you might think, because, the people above you are likely to be thinking the same thing for themselves. You might even be reverse mentoring your boss or other senior colleagues in other divisions who aren't, they may not be BAs, but they might be some of your internal clients, for example, or colleagues who you work closely with. And then the second thing is I would start investing in my network, because the people who you need to know, the people you need to be known to are different than just the people you're currently known to. And you'll want to broaden and also seniorize your network of relationships.
And this is within your company, right?
Yeah, within your company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you're looking to get promoted to the next level, the more senior you are, the less your immediate boss can do it all by themselves. So I remember, just for me, and Laura, why don't you, I'd love you to weigh in after I just share my example from my career, whether this would hold true in others' careers here too. So the first promotion I got, it was almost automatically. If I hadn't killed a client, I was going to get a promotion. Sorry to be dramatic, but then the one after that, my boss could really pound the table. He was pretty well respected and get me promoted. But after that, he could not get me promoted. In fact, he almost became a necessary but insufficient, because when you go in as the boss to pound the table for your person, you don't have as much credibility as if a third party who doesn't have a vested interest in promoting their people, if they pound the table, then that's even more credible, right? So this is why you want to be broadening your network. And I'm also guessing that leadership positions don't grow on trees. So you might need to go to a different division or a part of the organization. So the more you can be known outside your silo, the better. Then the third thing I'd be doing is developing my next level skills. So what do I mean by that? So every time you are looking to improve yourself and keep learning, growing, developing, and advancing, you want to be thinking about 3 areas and identifying which of those 3 areas you need to be investing in. And it could be some combination. So the first area is how you work with people. And in this case, I could see it really being, if you're wanting to move into leadership, then you need to demonstrate that you can lead and manage people, but you don't yet have a person to lead or manage. So that's where you do things like go and mentor a junior person on another team. Look for other opportunities to do that. It might even be outside the organization where you're leading something in part of a nonprofit that's your passion project, and make that visible to your management. The other part of how you work with people is developing your communication and influencing skills, because those are next level leadership skills that you're going to need. So start investing in, how are you showing up in these meetings? How do you persuade? How do you make the case for things? And so that whole communication to influence piece. So that's one area, how you work with people. A second area is, how do you work on the business? So this is where maybe as a business analyst, you have a advantage. So this is about seeing the bigger picture. Like you were saying, asking the questions that make everything expand, only this time you're also asking yourself those questions so you can expand your thinking and start to make suggestions. And then the third area is working on yourself. And oftentimes this is the most important area to work on, because underneath it all, if you haven't already promoted yourself in your own mind, so that's like that old story, new story, you have to already be able to see yourself in that new role in order to feel comfortable in your own skin, talking to other people about it, as opposed to going, oh gosh, I'm like that Oliver Twist story where he's in the orphanage and he's really hungry and he walks up with a begging bowl. It's like, more, please, and that kind of juniorizing yourself. No, you got to do the opposite. You got to promote yourself in your own mind and have the mindset of already being in the leadership seat. And that will, from within, show up as greater self-confidence without.
Yeah, that is so big. The acting as if, right? So like showing up to the role you're at with that mindset, with that mentality, and building those relationships. That was such a great answer. Great. And this is something you're going to help people with in this upcoming challenge. I know too, we're going to talk about, May is running this completely free challenge next week that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But first I wanted to, and then we're going to answer more questions after that. I wanted to talk about Christine's question, because I promised to get to this next. And I just love this question, right? About getting buy-in from colleagues who used to be your peers. So this just feels like that perfect. I mean, this is going to be a business analyst who was on the BA team and now maybe is leading or managing that team. And you could have some very senior level people. I know the first BA I hired had like 40 years of experience and I was 29. So I hadn't even been like alive that long, right? And he was not my peer because I had hired him, but it was still a threat, like not threat. He was not threatening, but it was like inside of me, it felt very threatening to do that. So advice on, getting buy-in from your peers, May.
Yeah. So with peers, they're all going to be a little bit different. So the first thing I would suggest is to have one-on-one meetings with them and find out what their aspirations are. Because really all people want to know is that you're not going to be a roadblock to their progression, because that's how it'll feel, right? Imagine how you feel if one of your peers is, that's called being layered, feeling like you've got another layer between you and the bigger boss. So that's the thing that I really like to do, is find out what they're interested in, what they're motivated by, what does success mean for them, what are their aspirations career-wise, and then make sure they understand that you're going to do everything you can in order to help them get there, including getting promoted to director level or whatever the VP level, whatever it is, and recognizing that it's not that they're going to have your job because you've just been put into your job, but maybe there's another area of the organization and you're going to help pave the way by making introductions, helping them to broaden their network, and so forth. And maybe you can give them a role or responsibility to help mentor some of the junior folks, for example, because some of them may really enjoy that part. Maybe they want it to be a people manager, so you can give them something that will provide them those opportunities.
Yeah, That's amazing. That's amazing. Just the buy-in and the collaboration, all skills that you have as a business analyst that you can bring to this kind of leadership role as well. So we have a
Yeah.
couple really, really great questions in the chat, but I also want to make sure we share a bit about this challenge that's coming up first, and then we can circle up
Yeah.
and answer a few of the questions. So this is a
I
great
love
time.
answering questions,
I
and
know, me
yeah,
too.
let's help
I
as
know we
many
would get
people as
lost
we can.
forever. So we've got to do it now before we forget.
Okay.
So why don't you talk about the Career Mastery Challenge that's coming up next week? And I'm going to share the link. I'm going to pop over to LinkedIn while you do that and share our link to it as well.
Great. So I would invite everyone to join the Career Mastery Challenge. We had over 3,000 people in the challenge last year, and they wrote back the most amazing things about how it changed their lives, it transformed their careers, it helped them create a career success roadmap that has led them to get results faster than just doing the usual, which for me, and maybe it is for you too, I hope not, but maybe it is, you get back to your desk in January, there is so much work to do, everything is urgent and important, and before you know it, you don't have enough focus on your own career, and it's then all of a sudden September and where's a year gone? So the Career Mastery Challenge is aimed at helping you to create your own career success roadmap in just 5 days. And it will take less than 30 minutes a day, and you'll emerge at the end with a clear roadmap for where you are now, where you want to go, and how to get from here to there. So we want
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing, May. And I want to say, like, every time we have sent people to any of your resources, like you've done a couple different things throughout, but we've just gotten great reviews of what people take out of it. I remember it was like the summit you used to run, and somebody was like, "This is so amazing that I stayed up all night binge watching it." Right. And so I know this isn't the summit, but like to me, that was like, I know I love you and trust you and to share your stuff with our community, but also that what you have done has resonated with other people in our Bridging the Gap community. And so I have a lot of faith and confidence in this as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura.
There is a VIP option. So there's a completely free option that May talked about. And you also have this option to upgrade for VIP. So what's involved with that?
Yep. So when you upgrade to VIP, then you will have access to group coaching calls. So I'll be doing 4 one-hour live group coaching calls during that next week. So this challenge runs from Monday, January 22nd through Friday, the 26th. And I'll do 4 group coaching calls then. And that's where you can get your questions answered. And I'll also be doing a little bit more deeper dive into the topics, and you'll get recordings of those calls if you can't make them. You'll also get lifetime access to the recordings of the challenge material. So every day of the challenge, you'll get a 5 to 7 minute video that explains what that day's assignment is. You'll have a worksheet, and you'll create your career success roadmap piece by piece and have it all at the end. We'll also have a couple of bonus guides, one on mastering your mental game. We talked a lot about that mindset piece, and another bonus guide on 3 strategies for supercharging your career success. And you'll also have an accountability call with me a month after the challenge is done, just to make sure that you have stuck with it. So if you're going to upgrade to the VIP, which I think is a fantastic deal, we've tried to make it just a wonderful, wonderful win for everybody, then I'd recommend that you register and sign up for that prior to Monday. In fact, why not just do it now? If you're like me, you'll get so busy that you'll forget, and then it'll be Monday, and then the price will have gone up on the VIP.
Awesome. And I want to say, like, it's $67, right? USD. Yes. Is that right? Correct. As the pre-sale. So like, this is a really amazing value, especially if you're thinking about getting your questions. Like, I have a question for May about all of this. It's just such a great value. And I am adding a couple bonuses as well. So May and I have a partnership around this. So I'm going to also be hosting a bonus call in early February. I didn't realize you had something called Supercharge, so I wasn't trying to take that term, but we're going to call it the Supercharge Your BA Career Coaching Session. So we'll talk about your plans and like the BA specific parts of it that you might want some help with. Like, how do you use a BA framework to bring more predictability to your process, or training mentors on your team, some things like that. And I'm also raffling off just one spot in our Blueprint program to one lucky VIP. So this is our flagship program that contains all 4 of my courses and 6 months of access to our online community and ongoing group coaching calls as well. And I will say, having the framework that we teach has been one of those very important things for business analysts to have. Like, if you are a BA who feels like you're making it up and like just figuring it out as you go, that does not scale well to a leadership role. You need to have a framework that you can use and also train your team to use. And that's part of the piece that we teach in the Business Analyst Blueprint. Okay, so I left the link. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to let us know. But I want to go back to some questions now, May, unless you have any other things that you want to say about the challenge. Okay. Let's see. Here we go. Madhu asked, how important is having a systems thinking and scientific thinking, data knowledge, understanding to get into a leadership position? What do you think about that?
I think I think that being able to be a systems thinker is really helpful when you're in a leadership role, and it will make you so much more effective. And so I think that's a plus. I think that if you can marry that alongside of some of the people and communication skills that we talked about, I think that will be a really formidable and powerful package. I don't know what you think, Laura.
Yeah, I think I used my system thinking skills to get out of the details, right? So it's systems thinking at a different level. So I started to do what is now known as business architecture, enterprise architecture type thinking. I wasn't creating all the models that connotes today, because this was quite a while ago. But I was seeing how all the different systems work together and how all the different processes work together. And that allowed me to scope projects that then BAs on my team could figure out the details for. So I think there's a shift, though. It's not the same kind of systems thinking that makes you successful as a business analyst.
That's a really important point. And yeah. And I just say there was the middle piece, the data knowledge. I'm not sure if the same comment would hold. I think the same comment's going to hold true there. It's not about knowing all the data yourself. It's about the interpretation and the so what of the data. So just be careful to interpret it the way Laura just said. You know, raise yourself up a level or two.
Yeah. And then here we have Angela. Angela, I've gotten to meet. She's been part of our Blueprint program. So great to see you here, Angela. And this came in when we were talking about getting other leaders to support you. So can you talk more about how would you get them to support your promotion? Like, do you have to ask directly, or just kind of hope that they kind of show up for you at the right times?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I remember saying quite a lot is hope is not a strategy. So sorry to say it here as well in a different context. That was about winning a piece of business. You know, we can't just hope they will select us. So I think you want to have a variety of different kinds of interactions with these decision makers. You know, first is, do you even know who they are? And do you know what the process is? So I would find that out first. And you could do that by asking around, ask people who have gotten that kind of promotion before, people who are in every organization. There are people who I call the tea leaf readers. They just seem to have their finger on the pulse, and they just know the kind of political lay of the land. So you can find those things out. And then once you figure out who these right people are, and by the way, you can start with your manager. Your manager If you can get them on side with you, hopefully you have a good relationship. Then what I would suggest is you sit side by side, either figuratively or literally or both, and look at this common goal of, hey, yeah, this is about paving the way for my promotion to next level. So if your boss is on board, then you can strategize together. Who needs to know about this? And what do they need to know? And your boss can be running interference for you. He or she can be making introductions. And then when you get in front of those people, I would err on the side of doing one of two things, or maybe even both. One is you can just share your aspirations with them. Like, this is an important year for me. I'm going to be up for promotion, and I would welcome any advice that you might have on what steps you would recommend that I take. Here's what I've already done. Boom, boom, boom. Any suggestions? Because sometimes people, especially more senior people who may not know you that well, they might need to, they may be better at editing than creating out of a clean sheet of paper in terms of what you should be doing. Others will have ideas. Like Laura and I, we're going to have ideas for you, but not every senior leader and decision maker. Some of them are very focused on the business and not so much on career paths and so forth. And so that's one set of things. The second set of things is I would consider creating a one-pager, which you can take around on what I call a mini roadshow. So in banking, when we were selling shares in a company, doing an IPO, we'd have a prospectus and we would take it on the road, and the company would present to all the potential investors. So this is the same kind of idea, only you're not asking them to invest in you with money, but right. So if you can have a one-pager that talks about your business and what's been going on in a way that shows that you are already that kind of next level thinker, that could be a perfect reason or excuse to get in front of some senior people on a quarterly basis, even just to let them know, update them on what's going on in your sphere. It could be, it's an answer to, oh, what's going on in your space? Or what are the major strategic themes happening that I should be aware of? So you can lead with the business, lead with the strategic intellectual knowledge. So like, I think it was Madhu who asked that question that Laura, you answered so smartly with, that next level of strategic thinking, and to show that you're at that level.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I feel like sometimes, I'm not saying this is the case for Angela, but I've definitely seen BAs who don't feel like the manager is in their corner. Like they're in a solo role, sort of on a tech team or on sort of a team where they're kind of the odd person out and don't feel like their role is well understood. So I just think this advice of building a network is important, not even necessarily to get into leadership, but to have your role embraced and accepted, and possibly even helping you find a better home in the organization, right? So this network that you can build, you can start it now, even if leadership is like a 10-year goal for you, and it's going to serve you really, really well in terms of bringing best practices in business analysis and just growing your career.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I just thinking that that this career success roadmap would be an ideal place for you to just start planning out something that has this longer 3 to 5 to or even 10-year horizon, and be able to start with the end in mind, and then work back from there to saying, what can you be doing right now to grow your network, to get these senior decision makers on side, or even to identify who they are.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we have time for this one last question, a follow-up from British, also on the network. So I think this is a great topic. So how beneficial would it be to contact leaders from prior companies that you've worked for? Obviously, you would have to transition out with great rapport with that specific leader. Yeah.
I always like to say to myself, be kind to everybody, because you never know who might become your boss, or you might become their boss or peer. Yeah. So very good thinking, British.
It was 10 years at least from after I left what was a toxic situation till I started talking about that publicly, right? I was like, I just don't need to tell anyone about this until I'm sure I'm on the other side.
Yeah. So,
so in terms of like, is there an advantage in contacting those people from other organizations in terms of supporting your next level leadership?
Yeah. So I think the answer's got to be yes.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I think they could give you some useful input and advice. And what you want to do with they could be your mentors, for example, right? And with mentors and with advice, you want to triangulate. So you don't just talk to one person and then take that as the factual truth. You want to get a bunch of different input on the same question or same topic. And that way you can, because feedback and advice is 50% about the giver and their whole lens on the world, which may be inaccurate. It may be different than yours. It might be outdated. So yeah, they would be very useful. And the other beautiful thing about those people who used to know you and rate you highly is they may know some of the decision makers in your organization. It's possible. And if that's the case, then that's where that third party testimonial, if you will, can be very powerful, because it just bolsters, if your boss is on your side, it bolsters that case. If your boss is not on your side, then it really, really helps you with this other positive data point from a former boss. So yes, I would reach out. Laura, what do you think?
It never can hurt. And if you're feeling blocked to opportunity in your current organization, those outreaches could also lead to opportunities in those new organizations as well. I think when you said share your career goals, like sharing them internally is so important, but also sharing them with other people who might be in a position to influence or open a door. You just never know. You never know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we are kind of close to the top of the hour here. So May, anything that you would like to leave people with today about this topic?
Yeah, what I would like you to remember is that your career is long. People are going to live to be 100. In Silicon Valley, they say even longer. And your work lifespan could be much longer than we all think. And therefore, make sure that whatever choices that you're making, that you will be living a no regrets life, and B, that you are keeping your opportunity set growing and open. So just to remain open-minded, because you never know, as Laura was just saying, who or what will lead you to that right next step, whether it's leadership or now, leadership later, or something entirely different. So be open, be in touch with how you want to live your life, and have fun.
That's awesome. And I would add to that and say yes to the opportunities that show up for you. Because I hear VAs, they overanalyze it and kind of overthink it, and they will pull back when like just a little bit forward is going to be the next possible thing, and like kind of open up who knows what for them. So, say yes more than you say no. And just a reminder to join May's challenge. This is a brilliant offer that you have for the community, and I can't wait to see what comes from this. This is a bit selfish for me to share too. I want BAs to grow and expand in their careers because it makes the profession better for everyone. And so I'm so excited to see you in leadership roles or growing in your individual contributor roles and doing the work in May's challenge next week. It's going to make a whole difference for your whole year. So thank you all so much for being with us live. If you're listening into the replay, that's amazing too. And we're so excited for you in this year. Thank you so much, May, for showing up and just sharing your gems with our community today.
You are welcome.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye for now, everyone.